hand if you've ever been asked the question, what do you want to be when you grow up?
Raise your hand if you've been ever asked the question, what are you gonna be when you grow up?
Raise your hand if you've ever been asked the question.
Raise your hand if you've ever been asked the question.
What do you want to be when you grow up?
What do you want to be when you grow up?
Now, if you had to guess, how old would you say you were when you were first asked this question? You can just hold up fingers. When you grow up. Now, if you had to guess. How old would you say you were when you were first?
How old would you say you were? How old would you say you were?
First asked this question.
When you first asked this question. If you had to guess, how old would you say you were when you first asked this question?
You can just hold up fingers. 3, 5, 3, 5, 5. Okay. Now, raise your hand if the question, what do you want to be when you grow up, has ever caused you any anxiety.
Raise your hand if the question, what do you want to be when you grow up, have ever had you caused an anxiety.
5. Okay. Now, raise your hand.
Raise your hands.
If the question, what do you want to be when you grow up?
If the question, what do you want to be when you grow up,
has ever caused you any
anxiety.
Any anxiety at all. I'm someone who's never been able to answer the question, what do you want to be when you grow up?
I'm someone who's never been able to answer the question, what do you want to be when you grow up?
See, the problem wasn't that I didn't have any interests.
The problem wasn't that I have any interest.
It's that I had too many interests. And what do you want to be when you grow up? See, the problem wasn't that I didn't have any interests. It's that I had too many. In high school, I liked English and math and art, and I built websites, and I played guitar in a punk band called Frustrated Telephone Operator, maybe called math and art interests. It's that I had too many. In high school, I liked English and math and art. And I built websites, and I played guitar in a punk band. Called Frustrated Telephone Operator. Maybe you've heard of us. This continued after high school. And at a certain point, I began to notice this pattern in myself.
This pattern in my life, in myself.
Where I would become interested in an area, and I would dive in, become all consumed.
When I'm interested in an area,
where I would become interested in an area,
and I would dive in,
and become all consumed. And I get to be pretty good at whatever it was.
At whatever it was.
And then I would hit this point where I'd start to get bored.
And then I hit this point where I start to get bored.
And usually I would try and persist anyway, because I had already devoted so much time and energy, and sometimes money, into this field. And usually I would try and persist anyway. Because I had already devoted so much time.
Because I had already devoted so much time. Because I had already devoted so much time and energy.
And sometimes because I had already. And usually I would try and persist anyway.
I would try and persist.
Because I had already devoted so much time and energy and sometimes money into this field.
And sometimes money into this field.
But eventually, this sense of boredom, this feeling of yeah, I got this. This isn't challenging anymore. It would get to be too much.
And finally, this sense of boring and kind of the feeling that I know I got it. Became too much.
But eventually, this sense of boredom, this feeling of yeah, I got this. This isn't challenging
I got this. This isn't challenging anymore. I got this. This is challenging
anymore. It would get to be too much.
It would get to be too much. It get to be too much.
And I would have to let it go.
And I would have to let it go.
But then I would become interested in something else. Something totally unrelated. And
I would become interested in something else. Something totally unrelated.
I would have to let it go. But then I would become interested in something else, something totally unrelated, and I would dive into that and become all consumed, and I'd be like, yes, I found my thing.
And I would dive into that, become all consumed, then I'd like, yes, I found my thing.
And then I would hit this point again.
And then I would hit this point again.
Where I start to get bored. And eventually, I would let it go. But then I would discover something new and totally different, and I would dive into that. This pattern caused me a lot of anxiety. For two reasons. The first was that I wasn't sure how I was going to turn any of this into a career. I thought that I would...
The first is I had no idea how would I turn this interest into career.
I wasn't anxiety for two reasons. The first was that I wasn't sure how I was going to turn any of this into a career. I thought that I would eventually have to pick one thing, deny all of my other passions, and just resign myself to being bored.
I thought that I would someday pick one out of all those passions and someday
pick one thing.
I thought that I would eventually have to pick.
I wasn't sure how I was going to turn any of this into a career. I thought that I would eventually have to pick one thing.
Pick one thing.
All of my other passions.
Deny all of my other passions.
And just resign myself to being bored. The other reason it caused me so much anxiety was a little bit more personal.
The other reason caused me a lot of anxiety is a bit more personal.
The other reason it caused me so much
anxiety
was a little bit more personal. I worried that there was something wrong with this.
I worried that there was something wrong with this.
And something wrong with me. For being unable to stick with anything.
There's something wrong with me for being unable to stick with this anything.
I worried that I was afraid of commitment, or that I was scattered, or that I was self-sabotaging, afraid of my own success. Just to stick with anything. Worried that there was something to stick with anything. I worried that I was afraid of commitment.
I worried that I was afraid of commitment.
Or that I was scattered.
Or that I was scared. Or that I was self-sabotaging. among the most common self-sabotaging behaviors are procrastination, self-sabotaging behavior, self-medication, withdrawal, comfort eating, and forms of self-injury such as cutting, comfort eating, self-sabotaging. Eating to make myself feel happier and satisfied. Comfort eating, self-sabotaging.
Afraid of my own success.
Afraid of my own success.
Scattered, or that I was self-sabotaging.
Self-sabotaging.
Afraid of my own success.
After self-sabotaging, comfort eating.
If you can relate to my story and to these feelings, I'd like you to ask yourself a question that I wish I had asked myself back then.
If you relate to my story, I'd like to ask a question to yourself that I would have asked myself.
If you can relate to my story.
If you can relate to my story. If you can relate to my story. The culture that he describes is different from mine that I find hard to relate to. Relate to my story. Okay, if you can relate to my story and to these feelings.
Into these feelings.
Identify, sympathize with, relate.
I'd like you to ask yourself a question.
I'd like you to ask yourself a question. Ask yourself a question.
That I wish I had asked myself.
That I wish I had myself. That I wish I had this myself.
Back then. Ask yourself where you learned to assign the meaning of wrong or abnormal to doing many things.
Ask yourself a question: where had you learned the meaning of wrong, abnormal, and what?
Or abnormal, or ask yourself where you learned to assign the meaning.
Ask yourself where you learn to assign the meaning. Assign the meaning. Where you learn to assign the meaning of the
meaning of wrong or abnormal to doing many things.
Wrong or abnormal to doing many things. Assign where you learn to assign the meaning of the word, okay.
Or abnormal to doing many things. I'll tell you where you learned it.
I tell you where you learned it.
You learned it from the culture.
You learned it from the culture.
We were first asked the question, what do you want to be when you grow up? When we're about 5 years old.
We are all asked the first question, what do you want to be when you grow up? When we are about 5 years old.
And the truth is that no one really cares what you say when you're that age.
And the truth is that no one really cares when you what you said at your age.
We're about 5 years old. And the truth is that no one really cares what you say when you're that age.
When you're that age.
It's considered an innocuous question posed to little kids to elicit cute replies, like, I want to be an astronaut, or I want to be a ballerina, or I want to be a pirate. Insert Halloween costume here. Yeah, post age. It's considered an innocuous question.
It's considered an innocuous question. Innocuous question. Innocuous question.
Posed to little kids to elicit cute replies. Like, I want to be an astronaut.
I want to be an astronaut.
Or I want to be a ballerina.
I want to be a ballerina.
Or I want to be a pirate.
I want to be a pirate.
Insert Halloween costume here.
Insert Halloween costume here.
But this question is asked of us again and again as we get older in various forms. For instance, as we be a ballerina, or I want to be a pirate. Insert Halloween.
Attention. 비행가. And now here's question.
Costume here. But this question is asked of us again and again as we get older in various forms. For instance, high school students might get asked what major they're going to. But this question is asked of us.
Gets asked of us. Just asked of us. Just asked of us. Of. I ask myself. Ask a favor of you. Get asked of us. Yes, too much of me. But this question gets asked of us again. Gets asked of us. Request something of another person. I hope she doesn't ask that of me. I'm afraid I won't be able to say no. I'm sorry, but I'm not sure. Ask those questions of the ass of the boss. Gets asked of us.
Again and again as we get older in various forms.
In various forms.
For instance, high school students might get asked.
For instance, high school students might get asked
what major they're going to pick in college.
What major they're going to pick in college. Ask myself.
And at some point. What do you want to be when you grow up?
What do you want to be when you grow up?
It goes from being the cute exercise it once was.
From being the cute exercise it once was. From being the cute exercise it once was.
To the thing that keeps us up at night.
To the things that keeps us up and keeps us up at night.
Why? See, while this question inspires kids to dream about what they could be, it does not inspire them to dream about all that they could be. See, while this question inspires kids to dream about what they could be, it does not inspire them to dream about all that they could be.
This question inspires kids to be concerned with what they could be, and not inspires them to all they could be.
See, while this question inspires kids to dream about what they could be.
While this question inspires kids to dream about what they could be,
it does not inspire them to dream about.
It's not. It does not inspire them to dream about
all that they could be.
all that they could be.
In fact, it does just the opposite.
In fact, it does just the opposite. Does just the opposite.
Because when someone asks you what you want to be,
Because someone asks you when you want to be, what you want to be,
you can't reply with 20 different things.
we can reply with 20 different things.
The well-meaning adult will likely chuckle and be like, oh, how cute, but you can't be a violin maker and a psychologist. You have to choose. You have to be like, you can't reply with 20 different things. The well-meaning adult will likely
The well-meaning adult will like
chuckle and be
chuckle.
like, oh, how cute, but you can't be a violin maker
How cute, but you can't be a violin maker
and a psychologist.
and a psychologist. Chuckle.
You have to choose. This is Dr. Bob Childs. And he's a luthier and a psychotherapist.
And he's your lead luthier and psychotherapist. Luthier. One that makes or repairs the strings. This is your violin. Luthier.
And this is Amy Ung, a magazine editor turned illustrator.
This is Amy Nang, a magazine editor turned illustrator turned editor turned illustrator. I'm a teacher turned
Entrepreneur, teacher, and creative director. But most kids don't hear about people like this.
But most kids don't hear about people like this.
All they hear
All they hear
is that they're going to have to choose.
is that they're going to have to choose.
But it's more than that.
There's more than that.
The notion of the narrowly focused life
The notion of the narrowly focused life,
is highly romanticized in our culture.
highly romanticized in our culture.
It's this idea of destiny or the one true calling.
It's the idea of destiny or the one true calling.
The idea that we each have one great thing we are meant to do during our time on this earth, and you need to figure out what that thing is and devote your life to it. We are meant to do during our time, we are meant to the one true calling. The idea that we each have one great thing
The idea that we each have one great thing
we are meant to do during our time on this earth,
we are meant to do during our time on earth.
and you need to figure out what that thing is
You need to figure out what that thing is
and devote your life to it.
and devote your life to it.
But what if you're someone who isn't wired this way?
What if someone isn't wired someone is wired in this way?
What if there are a lot of different subjects that you're curious about
What if there's a lot of subjects you're curious about,
and many different things you want to do?
many different things you want to do?
Well, there is no room for someone like you in this framework.
There's no room for someone like you in this framework.
And so you may feel alone.
So you may feel alone.
You might feel like you don't have a purpose.
You may feel like you don't have a purpose.
You might feel like there's something wrong with you.
You may feel like you're something wrong with you. That's too much, lady, boy.
There's nothing wrong with you.
There's nothing wrong with you.
What you are is a multi-potentialite.
What you are is a multi-potentialite.
A multi-potentialite is someone with many interests and
A multi-potentialite is someone who has many interests
creative pursuits.
and creative pursuits.
It's a mouthful to say,
It's a mouthful to say.